Thank you, Deputy Presiding Officer. Firstly, I move the motion, just to get that out of the way straight away. Presiding Officer, Deputy Presiding Officer, congratulations to you and to your colleagues for your appointment. Before I get into the meat of the debate today, if you'll permit me, I would also like to thank my predecessor in Dundee City East, Shona Robson, who was not only an outstanding minister, as I'm sure the First Minister will agree, but a tireless advocate for Dundee as well. I know she'll be greatly missed in this place. Can I also thank my predecessors in this portfolio, Gillian Martin, who's here with me today, but also Angus Robertson, not only for their tireless work in the portfolios that I cover, but also, I'm not embarrassed to say, some guidance and some valuable advice in my first days in the post as well. I'd also like to thank colleagues from across Parliament for their good wishes. I want to say straight off that it is my aim, and the First Minister said this about his own role, to work in a collegiate fashion, to agree where we possibly can, to disagree rigorously, and I'm sure there will be opportunities for that too, but agreeably where we can't. No party or MSP has a monopoly on wisdom, not least me, and I very much look forward to working with everybody in this chamber. And can I also say I'm so grateful to the good wishes that I've had from colleagues from other parties as well. I won't embarrass you, but it has been heartening. Thank you. Most of all, nobody will mind me saying, I'd like to thank the people of Dundee East for their faith in me, and also my thanks to the people in Dundee and Angus for the privilege of serving as their Member of Parliament. I'll miss the parts of the constituency that my colleagues Heather Anderson and Lloyd Melville are now fortunate enough to represent, but I'm absolutely determined to get stuck in for Dundee. Dundee is Scotland's yes city. It's a city where my own family were once migrants from Ireland. A city that, like the rest of Scotland, is at its best because of its diversity and its outward-looking nature. That enriches our industries and it enriches our society as well. And that informs my politics. That city informs my politics, as I know it does to other colleagues here as well. It's a city that has been in the heart of Scotland's successes in food and drink, higher education, journalism, and of course in energy. And that moves us to the fundamental points of our debate today. Today we're debating where decisions should be made. Are they better being made here, in Scotland's Parliament, that is voted on by the people who live and work in Scotland, or at Westminster? And whatever our views, surely it is one that Scotland's energy policies should be in Scotland's hands. Scotland is one of the most energy-rich countries in Europe, having won the natural lottery twice, once with hydrocarbons and again with its abundant renewables resources. Yet despite that, and do you know what? I am going to take an intervention, despite it being my first speech, and who better than the member for
Murdo Fraser. I would remind Mr Fraser that the convention is that there's no interventions, but the member has indicated that he's happy to take one.
My apologies to you, Presiding Officer, and to the member. He was so confident in his approach. It entirely slipped my mind it was his first speech in this chamber. And can I very much welcome him to his place on the front bench as Energy Minister. But I wanted to ask him about the renewable energy he's talking about, which Scotland has benefited from, which of course is funded by subsidies currently paid by 70 million people across the United Kingdom. If he dismantles the UK energy market, as he proposes to do, will that not mean that those subsidies will then need to be paid by 5.5 million people living here in Scotland? And what would that do for bills being paid by consumers here?
Stephen Gethins.
Thank you, Deputy Presiding Officer. I've got great respect for the member, and I thank him both for his intervention and for his welcome as well. I would urge him patience, but I will say merely this. Scotland is a massive exporter of energy. Other markets rely on our energy and have done so for decades. And you know, this speaks, and I'm sorry to say it, to the isolationist approach that's been taken by the Conservative Party, who turn their back on a Europe that's coming together because of energy security, who turn their back on that. And isolationism is not a policy that our party will endorse, or a majority for that matter, in this Parliament. And I'm going to come on to that. Because yesterday, in energy-rich Scotland, we're facing increasing energy bills, just yesterday being increased by a Labour government that promised to reduce them, but putting them up. A country that produces more energy than it consumes. Now, just for context, Mr Fraser will be delighted by this, just for context, our oil and gas industry that sent £400 billion to the Treasury over decades, £400 billion, with very little in return and no long-term planning. Can you imagine a finite resource with no long-term planning, one of the few countries on earth never put together a future generations fund? That's why Westminster's failed, and that's why this place deserves to have full control over energy. And with renewables, renewables alone deliver 20.8 terawatt-hours outside Scotland annually. Now, to put that into context, that's worth £1.7 billion, and if we kept it in Scotland, would be enough to power every home in Scotland from that annual export for 3.5 years. What value to the rest of the UK, and what value to the whole of Europe as well? When it comes to European and UK energy security, lower bills should be part of the solution from where this is produced, but we have been let down. And that's why decisions about energy should be made here. And it's Westminster's track record, be it under the Conservatives, or those former Conservatives, or be it under Labour, where the track record means that Westminster no longer deserves to keep control. The disconnect between Scotland's energy wealth and the daily reality facing households is not inevitable. And we all talked, and I heard some fantastic speeches about the conversations that have taken place over the past few weeks. It is a consequence of a constitutional arrangement that leaves decisions about Scotland's energy in the hands of Westminster, delivering, in this energy-rich part of Europe, amongst the highest energy bills anywhere in Europe. And that should be a challenge for each and every one of us in this chamber. Now, the people of Scotland returned a government with a clear instruction: deliver the benefits of Scotland's energy wealth to Scottish households, communities and businesses. And that position, as set out by the First Minister, was endorsed by the electorate. And if we go in deeper into it, polling evidence came out during the election, you'll all recall this, I'm sure, whereby Ipsos survey last month told us that over 3/4 of Scots think there should be more devolution over energy, with just 14% bring together the Labour policy, Reform policy and Conservative policy, thinking it should be under Westminster control. I'm going to give way for a second time because I've got great respect for the member, and I'll do that now.
Michael Mara.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. And can I also welcome the Minister to his position as a friend as I consider him to be. I'm very delighted to see him in his place. He spent the election campaign talking about that independence could deliver a third off of energy bills in Scotland. Can he tell us how?
Stephen Gethins.
You know, first of all, I'm going to say in this spirit that I've got great respect for the member, and I thank his kind words, and I know he's an advocate for the North East and for Dundee as well. But he's got to understand that when we sit here, when we're exporting electricity, when the Treasury in London is benefiting, you could do stuff like having a social contract, for example, a social tariff, for instance, that would help lower the bills for those most in need. Just one thing that you could do. But this isn't just to benefit Scotland's citizens. I want to talk about this. I want to talk about the rest of my brief. Scotland, as a responsible and outward-looking member of the European family of nations. Now, yesterday, my first meeting in my external affairs brief was with the Ukrainian Consul General. Back in January, I sat for 2 nights in a bunker as the Russians bombarded Ukraine's energy infrastructure. That's because Europe needs to move closer together in a more dangerous world, something that parties that have turned their back on Europe do so at their peril and at our peril as well. We are rich and we should be thriving, and we're part of Europe's solution in terms of that energy crisis that it is. Now, others will be glad that I saw that for myself in Aberdeen this week, my first ministerial visit on Monday. And I'm grateful to colleagues from across the sector for meeting me. These businesses matter. And if we look at the net zero worth The CBI report yesterday showed that industries are worth over $10 billion, worth 5% in total economic input, and employing over 100,000 people in jobs, something the member for Murray raised at FMQs today. We see that onshore and offshore, and our opportunity is set to grow. This could be game-changing for Scotland, with global capital expenditure of the value of around $100 billion coming down the track. Huge potential, which is held back by Westminster, not least in punitive transmission charging charges set by Westminster that are holding our industry back, which was cited to me by business. Now, this government's doing everything it can within its limited powers. We've used $150 million investment to attract wider investment and create a funding stack worth almost $900 million in projects across Scotland. I'm going to make some progress, and I wasn't particularly. I'm not sure. I got particularly good response from Mr. Fraser. So let me make a bit of progress, because this might not matter to the Conservative Party, but high energy bills matter to the people of Scotland. And a Labour government that came in promising that bills would be £300 lower, and yesterday another eye-watering increase means they'll be £300 higher. That's not good enough. The future lies in clean, affordable and secure power, strengthening affordability, resilience and competitiveness, but also protecting Scottish people and businesses from our energy bills being dictated by international events. Now, within the powers we have, the limited powers we have, we're already seeing reform of the energy consent process to enable to bring us forward more lower-cost renewable energy. We'll establish a Scotland Health Fund over the course of this Parliament, a Future Generations Fund that Labour and the Conservatives failed to establish for the oil and gas sector, more community ownership, and already delivering £15 million, deliver on the £500 million Just Transition Fund, and support the Acorn project for the North East for carbon capture and storage. Do you remember that, Tories? Carbon capture and storage. Now, these commitments, more immediately, we want to see updated guidance to public bodies on community use of public land and an assessment of the potential for placing solar panels in underused spaces. But this cannot be done within the current devolution process to meet our full potential. And that leads me to oil and gas. Few industries know the price of Westminster failure better than our oil and gas sector. North Sea oil and gas play a vital role in Scotland's energy system and security mix, and the excellence delivered by that workforce in the North East, who were let down by their wealth squandered by successive Westminster governments. No future generation fund. Let's look to next door Norway. Next door Norway has a sovereign wealth fund worth £1.6 trillion, 6 times Scotland's GDP. Just think what we could have done with that. Now, the North Sea is a mature and declining basin, so it is vital we have a parallel track approach to the transition. That oil and gas production is managed alongside the increasing deployment of renewables, but a transition put at risk by the current Energy Profits Levy, accelerating North Sea oil and gas decline, but failing to give the support needed to renewables to ensure that just transition. That needs to be a fair approach, and it's why I'm afraid we can't back the motion by the Greens today. But that needs to be an approach for the North Sea, as the First Minister said today, on an evidence-led, case-by-case basis where climate compatibility and energy security tests are met. And I heard that in Aberdeen about that joined-up approach. I was also glad that Mr Flynn, in his first visit, went to Grangemouth, who have been so badly let down by Westminster, because climate action and a just transition to net zero brings benefits across Scotland, and we will support the creation of 500 additional jobs in the Grangemouth industrial cluster, and at the same time investing £9 million in support for workers in Mossmoran. Now, on community benefit, and we have to reject the Liberal Democrat motion because it does knock out the devolution, which Liberal Democrats were once in favour of those powers. But I will be working hard, and I look forward to working with the member, and I've got great respect for the member for Orkney, for Liam MacArthur as well, about how we can expand the work that's already been done. But let's not forget that's community benefits that last year alone delivered £30 million to our communities. So, in conclusion, and I think I am reaching my conclusion, let me just say, a more energy-secure Scotland will see us build renewable energy generation that will lower bills. protect us from international shocks and secure good jobs for those currently employed in our offshore sector who bring so much to our economy. Scotland has the energy, it does not yet have the power. Our vast resources are amongst the best in Europe, but the people are not feeling the benefit. Westminster's had its chance. It failed. Now, what we're asking Parliament to do today is to empower this Parliament to be part of the solution across Europe on energy security, part of the solution locally, nationally and internationally, and vitally in people's homes. And I would ask my colleagues to back our motion today. Thank you, Presiding Officer.